We've been lied to about our relationships, right? We've been lied to. And if you've ever felt like you're doing all the right things in your relationships, I'm just going to move my slide across, and you still feel unseen, stuck, secretly unsatisfied, right? You're not alone. Like, you're really not alone. Was that moved? No, there it goes. It's moved now. Let's get one thing straight from the start. We've been sold a lie, which I just said, not just one lie, like this whole dysfunctional curriculum of lies about what love and relationships are supposed to look like, right? Pop a 1 in the chat box if you get what I'm saying here, right? The fairy tales and the rom-coms, right? Being the good girl and the good boy, like the rules around that. Toxic communication patterns, self-help fluff that teaches us to perform for validation rather than connect, right? Let me know if you know what I'm saying here. It's not the only lie we've been sold out there, right? We've been taught to think about and work on ourselves and our relationships like we are and they are broken machines. Right? Instead of feeling into our relationships like they're living, breathing mirrors of our truth. And what happens when these strategies that we're fed don't work? Right? What happens? Yeah, we blame ourselves. We blame everyone else, right? We tell ourselves we're not good enough, not doing enough, not saying the right things, or being better partners or parents, right? Not being better partners or parents, or we point the finger convinced that it's all them, their moods, their shutdowns, their lack of effort. Here's the truth. You weren't taught to relate. You were taught to manage, to keep the peace, to stay safe, to survive love, right? To survive love, or to do anything you can to get love and keep it, right? And we're not living it because we're not taught how to be real in our relationships, right? We're taught to perform, to please, to protect ourselves. And now it's time to do it differently, right? To show up, to speak our truth, to finally feel what real connection tastes like. What I'm saying here is what we think is happening actually isn't what's happening, right? It's not an accurate representation of what's actually happening in front of you because we're taught to grab the past and dump it into the present. So that next premise, what you think is happening, isn't actually what's happening. Right? Your definition creates your perception. The way that we define everything that's happening around us creates the way that we see it. And then the way that we see it creates our experience of it. It creates our reality of it. And this is so huge. So perception is the first saboteur, right? The first real problem that's fucking up our relationships, the way we see everything. And the way that I love to describe this, and I know some of you would have heard this story before, is my triangle friendship story. When I was younger, I had 2 best friends, right? And we would hang out, we'd do everything together. And I came to school one day and I came up behind them and I was almost there. I was almost up to them and I stopped dead in my tracks because I heard them talking. And they were saying the most horrible things about me, right? I was 7 and they were saying all these horrible things about me. And I stopped dead in my tracks. I couldn't move, right? I started to feel sick. I started to feel hot, right? And I literally froze. And then I managed to get myself together and like exit stage left. I like ran, right? I ran straight to the sick bay. The nurse called my mother. My mother came and picked me up. I had 3 days off school. And by the time I finally went back to school, my 2 friends came up to me and they're, oh my God, are you feeling better? Oh, we missed you and blah, 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 right? And I said, what do you mean? You guys were talking about me and you were saying all these awful things and blah. And they were like, what? They were like, we weren't talking about you. We were talking about Sarah, the class bully. And I was like, oh. I'd put myself through 3 days of hell, yeah, on something that wasn't even true. What I'm talking about here is what we think is happening isn't actually what's happening, yeah. I had two friends. We were in this friendship triangle, right? They were talking, and I was making up all of this shit in my head that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't worthy, that they didn't like me, right? And it was rubbish. It wasn't even true. That's our perception. What we think is happening isn't actually what's happening. We're stuck in our perception of ourselves, right? Of others and the world. But what creates it? What creates it? The mind, right? The ego. It defines, because the mind wants to categorize everything. Because we don't respond to what's actually happening, we respond to what we believe is happening, and it comes from the past, right? We're not even here. We're not responding to what's happening in front of us, especially if we're upset. And being upset is like your red flag, right? This is your marker if you're upset. If you're hysterical, it's historical. Right? If you're upset, you're in the past. You're not even here, right? You're not with what's happening in the moment. And that's why presence is the antidote, right? So when you lift out of perception, you come into presence. Presence, right? When you lift out of perception, you come into presence. This is the way out of definitions. You come into presence when you're here, when you're now, because you can't perceive clearly when you're looking at the world through old definitions. You've got to learn to be with what's here without trying to make sense of it. Because as soon as you're trying to make sense of it, you're going, what's going on here, right? And then you grab a whole lot of stuff from the past and dump it into the present, go, that's what's going on, right? That's what I did in my triangle friendship story. I know what's going on. They're talking about me because I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough, right? I'm not lovable. That's what's happening. That was me trying to make sense of it, not dropping into presence and going, hang on a minute. Going up to my friend saying, who are you talking about? Oh, we're talking about Sarah. And I probably would have had a whole conversation with them about Sarah, right? So we need to be able to learn to be with what's here without trying to make sense of it, because our perception is loaded with what we think is going on. So we miss what actually is. This is the power of presence. So just for a moment, I want you guys to allow your eyes to close. Let's just have a little brief experience of this. I want to drop you into a state of presence, right? A state of innocence where you let go of what you think you know, right? Maybe like, oh my God, I need to do this right, right? Let go of it, all of the need to know, the need to get it right, the need to, worry about what you look like on the screen at the moment. Just let it go. Just bring your focus to your breath. And what I mean by that is just to notice your breath for a moment, coming in through your nostrils, going out through your nostrils. Just notice where your feet are on the floor, that connection between the bottom of your feet and the floor. Allow your shoulders just to drop. So let yourself be in the moment. Maybe say to yourself, I don't need to understand this. I'm just here now. Just letting go of needing to fix or to figure out. And when you're ready, just lowering your gaze and flickering your eyes open, maybe just taking a little look around the room just as I'm moving into the next piece. And just imagine what it would be like if you moved from that place. And maybe that was not an easy place for you to drop into. It was a tiny little taste. Maybe it was enough for you to think, wow, actually, if I could be in that place more often, maybe things would be a bit different. Responding, rather than reacting, rather than flying into, I know what's happening here. My friends don't like me. They're talking about me, right? If my 7-year-old self had had the tools to just drop into that state of innocence, maybe I would have gone up to them and said, hey, who are you talking about? I was 7. I didn't have the tools. Because most of the time we move into reaction, we launch into reaction. A lot of the time there's not even a space before we're in reaction. And that's the second saboteur, right? Reaction. So this second saboteur, right, or problem, reaction, it's our reaction, right? I mean, it sounds so obvious. And it's not about you overreacting. It's not about the reaction, right? What it's about is being under-resourced. I lived in reaction land, right? And I didn't know that I lived in reaction land because that was just my normal. I was so on alert and I was so reactive. But what is actually underneath that reaction? Because what I want to do here is reframe our reactivity to be about our nervous system. Yeah, you're not overreacting, you're just under-resourced. So we've got a few more premises here. Your thoughts and feelings aren't real again, right? You can't think your way out of a survival state because this is about your nervous system. It's not about the reaction that sits on top. Because you can't think your way out of it when you're in a survival state. And it's the survival state that sits underneath the reactive state, right? It's what makes you react. So you're not crazy, you're not broken, you're not toxic, you're unresourced, right? And a hijacked nervous system doesn't need judgment or punishment, it needs support. So let's just think about reaction for the moment, because this is what most of us know, right? We know when we get triggered. We know that and sometimes we don't know that we're numbing, right? Numbing stuff out so that we don't even allow ourselves to feel it, right? And I'd love you guys to put in the chat box 1, 2, 3, 4, or 4, 5, or 6 of which one is your go-to. Sometimes we're a bit of a combo, right? Sometimes we numb stuff out and we don't want to feel stuff.
Squash out.
What is it for you? Do you numb stuff out and not allow yourself to feel it? Yeah, that was definitely me earlier in life. Do you squash it? Squash it all down, put a lid on it, right? Suppress it all. Do you chuck it out at everyone else? Right? Maybe you're a squash and chuck, right? You squash it all down, don't want to feel it. And then when it gets too much, you explode like a volcano when somebody spills the milk, right? Is that you? Because that definitely used to be me as well. Provoke a chucker. This is one that I put in. This is a little self-identification. Which one are you? I would provoke people so that I could unleash, right? My own reaction. Not that I was consciously doing that, but that's what was happening. And the provoker victim. Push buttons, like provoke other people so that then I can play the victim. So what is a resource nervous system? Right? It's a system that can stay present in intensity. Even when the shit is going down, even when everything is coming at you, you don't collapse or explode, right? It's a nervous system that responds instead of reacts. So the window of resilience, which I've got on the slide at the moment, right? It's a window. It's your capacity to stay present and resourced under pressure. Because life life is full, right, of chaos and challenge and all of this stuff, right? And I think one of the things that kept me the most stuck is believing that it shouldn't be, and it is, right? It's full of challenge. It's full of just stuff coming at you, right? Imperfection. Being inside your window of resilience is your capacity to stay present and resourced under pressure, where you're not flipping between freak out, right, and flatline. Because if you're constantly reacting, if you're stressed on high alert, you're living outside your window, right? If you go from fight, right, and freeze, right? So fight, rage, anger, or freeze, which is shut down. If you're always in flight, which is the overdoing, doing, overworking, doing, right? You're in flight. Fawning, people pleasing. Flopping is when you just give up, right? It's like you energetically just, you're offline, right? If that's you, your window is tiny, right? Like mine used to be, it was tiny. If you think of a spectrum, right? One end is reaction, fight, flight, right? Oh my God, freak out. And the other end is the down for the fatigue, the depression, the shutdown, right? The exhaustion, the withdrawal. And there's a window in the middle, right? Where you're resourced, you're calm, you're grounded, you're present. You're clear-minded, emotionally available, right? Capable of choice. What I would love to do is to share with you a little bit more about what it is that is coming next, right? I've given you guys a lot of powerful stuff here for you to take away, for you to think about, for you to have land. And I really want to share with you the next steps, right? If you're ready for more. And there is more. Because as I said, your relationships aren't a problem to fix. They're a portal into who you came here to be, right? You've done the hard part by showing up to this masterclass. Now, the question is, are you ready to stop the survival states and actually start creating, right? Focusing on what you don't want, starting to focus on what you do. Now, this masterclass scratched the surface, right? I gave you a lot of value in here, some really powerful pieces to allow to land. But what you've just experienced was like the spark, man. That was just like the, right? The very beginning. Inside the next steps, right? Which is what I call coming from the Unfuck Your Relationships Masterclass to the Fuck Yesss Relationships Mastermind, because that's what I wanted, right? I wanted to have fuck yes relationships. I didn't want to have just meh relationships, right? Or ones that I was surviving or getting through. I wanted fuck yes relationships. So that's what I want to give you guys a little taste of just for the last 10 minutes or so from our call. This is where we build the fire, right? And what this is, and I'm just going to give you a little slide here about what this next step is. It's a mastermind. It's not a surface level coaching group, right? This is a full system recalibration for your nervous system, which we've touched on today, for your relationships and your truth, right? Because the patterns that we started to look at today, this shit runs deep, right? And if you don't integrate this stuff, you just fall back into reaction, right? Into resentment, into survival. You'll go back to sleep because it happens all the time. So you're here because you're ready for something different. And this is where we make that happen. And there's a tiered structure. There's multiple pathways to come into this mastermind. Whether you're new to this work, right, and already deep in it, which I know some of you on the call are, there's a tier for where you're at. And there's a bonus, right? There's a bonus that is part of this launch and this launch only. If you join any one of these tiers, if you come in for a month and have a taste, right, I call it the awakening, right, which is what it is. This is the foundational nervous system rewiring. So what I was going to say is there's a bonus that's going to be unlocked just for this launch. And this bonus is if you join any tier, if you come in for a month, if you come in for 3 months, if you come in for 12 months, right, you're going to get access to the first 3-day training, which is normally only reserved for the longer term members only. Right, so we've got a 3-day training that's coming up in about 3 weeks where you've had 2 hours, right? Can you imagine the awareness and the embodiment and the integration that you're going to get with 3 full days? Yeah, it's powerful. Lifetime access, right? Some of you would have taken the VIP upgrade, right, and got a couple of programs, access to Empower, what was it? Shit Hot Boundaries and the Get More Time program, right? That's part of the VIP upgrade to get the replay for the masterclass. It's still available. You can still grab that. But if you come in to the Fuck Yesss Relationships Mastermind, then you get access, lifetime access to all of the programs, right? There's a few of them there. So you get direct access to me for the next week. If you are not sure about where you fit in, if you really can feel the power of this work with what we've done in the masterclass today, and you're like, fuck yeah, I'm in. Yeah, but you want to talk about it. You want to talk about where you can come in, where you might fit, the pricing structures, right? I'll be available for you to book a call with. I'll be available for you to send me a message to, yeah, for the next week, because after that, the doors close. So if that is you, then look out for the email and book in a call, right? If you're serious about creating fuck yes relationships for yourself, if you're serious about unfucking the relationships that you have with yourself and other people, then I want to talk to you, right? I want to talk to you.